Welcome to the Labyrinth. I'm your host, Pratham Padav. My guest today is Raphael Samwell, popularly known as Nihil Anand. He's one of India's most famous anti-natalist and nihilist. Raphael, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Pratham. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so what are your general thoughts on the current pandemic?
It is the final. I really hope people, learn their lesson from this damn pandemic. It's about time because I've been warning people for years, telling them that something is coming, something is coming. But let's see. I mean, I doubt people are going to learn at a mass scale, but there is always a hope, And I'm thrilled. I'm having great fun with this pandemic.
So when did you become an anti-natalist?
So I properly, I was around 22, 23. When I realized that the way this world works and the way the levels of suffering, and I was constantly discovering stuff, like why is this world exists? Like what is the point of me being here? And I would always have this conflict with my parents. I mean, they were not bad people or anything. We had great rapport. But it was because free speech was encouraged that this thought process came up that you must question everything. So I started questioning life itself, and then the obvious conclusion of any thoughtful person, I feel, is anti-natalism. So that sort of came to fruition at the age of 22.
Okay, so in your household, free speech was encouraged, but in a lot of Indian households, free speech is not encouraged, and as a result, they can't really question their parents, and they're conditioned to think or conditioned to believe that their parents are gods and goddesses, and they can't really. There is no scope at all. There is no opportunity for them to become an anti-natalist. How would you communicate to such people? Because they would get offended or they would get angered by you.
Yeah, so basically what happens is anyone who is insecure now, like a dictator or anyone who has their power in a precarious position, will always influence the people in a way that in that you owe me kind of thing, and that is what basically Indian parents are. Most Indian parents, they are nothing but dictators. They constantly try and tell the kids that basically I own you, and I've given you everything. But that's not the truth. What will happen if kids start retaliating, right? Then the lines will be redrawn. Right now, only parents draw the line. But if we start redrawing the line, then parents will start realizing, oh, I'm getting a backlash. They will start thinking twice about everything that they do with the child. Right now, they just take the child for granted. So we have to learn how to redraw lines. Same. This is with any men and women, society, anyone, everyone. The person who's being oppressed has to redraw the line, basically.
In an ideal world, would you say that no one should have kids, or do you think that some folks can still have kids? Because there are few individuals who are capable of having kids, and like your parents, for example, they had you, and and they let you speak your mind.
Okay, so it's not necessarily about speaking your mind. Okay, it's about, yes, of course you can raise the child right, and you can give them all the opportunity in the world, but there are so many other variables. Any kind of harm can come to them. They can internally they can collapse. Okay, mentally they can collapse, and the way the world has been designed, it's more and more against you. Like there are you're playing multiple chess games at multiple levels. You're getting educated, you're getting a job, you're trying to find a girlfriend, all this is leading to some level of suffering. And of course, suffering is finally what you feel. Like pain is not optional, but suffering is optional. But people do feel the pain, and why should anyone feel the pain? Like, what is the point? So yes, in an ideal world, no one should have kids, and there should be no life also. Like for me, the ideal world is the moon. There's no life.
But why do you fantasize death so much? Anyways, we're all going to die, right? And we are going to perpetually non-exist in a short while. In a short while, we'll both continuously not exist at all. So why the urgency right now?
There is no urgency to die as such, as much as there is a need to not exist. It's not like, I want to die right now and I want to feel the pain and I want to get away from all this. If I wanted to die right now, I'd be dead. There is no question of, for me, want and actually getting it done is a matter of a few seconds. I always do what I want. So it's that the question that why am I here and why did I need to exist in the first place? And I think it's the only and the most important question that anyone needs to answer. So this is me just asking that question that why am I here? And if I can, what is the option to become oblivion? To become completely obliviated.
You're right. I mean, we didn't have a say in whether to exist or not. But while we are here, we might as well make the most of it, right?
Absolutely, I have no problem with that. In the sense of, I've always made the most of it. I always have fun, and for me, it's like there is no fear because I'm like, what's the worst that's gonna happen? I'll die. Okay, I'll die. Fine. So there is no fear, nothing stopping me, no money issues that way. So yes, I actually live more than someone who is scared of death or doesn't want to die. Technically.
That's true. Uh, 2 years ago, you sued your parents. Can you give us the backstory behind that incident?
Actually, it was basically a table talk. Okay, like we were just, we used to eat breakfast or whatever, and it'd be like a sue you all and stuff like that. And then I joined something called Child Free India, where I just casually mentioned that I'm going to be suing my parents and stuff. And then it became this entire big story, that they just told one journalist or something, and the journalist called me, and I spoke with her, and I just forgot about it, and then it just blew up into the thing. By then I put out the case. It failed also, and they threatened me not to go ahead with it because they said there'd be a fine. I mean, I could appeal and all that, but there was a fine. There's going to be a fine saying that it is for publicity. Because it went against the very ethos of Indian culture. So it was not even accepted in a court. Like it was just like boom, out. That's how it happened.
Yeah, because in India, I mean, parents behave as if they own their children, and you questioning something like that or suing your own parents for giving birth to you, it's kind of against the religious cultural mainstream of India. How do you plan
Yeah,
on?
they would have.
Yeah, how do you
They would
plan
have
on
been
going?
right.
Yeah, they would have been
Yeah,
crying.
how to go on? Yeah,
So,
yeah. It would have, like I'm telling you, it would have gone bloodshed on the street. It would have
mm,
crazy.
yeah,
Okay, your question. Sorry.
no, the main thing that I want to ask you is like, what is so bad about existence? Like, why do you hate it so much? Like, you obviously hate existence more than the average person,
Yeah.
right?
It's not really hate actually. It's just that when you look at things on a wide enough scale, right? When you look at things from everything that is happening, you're just like, what is the point? I'm more than hating anything. I don't hate anything really. I'm just asking the point, and it's a very passionate question because I think it's the most important question. Why? No one asks why. Everyone has the where and the what and the how, but even our parents, they just don't ask why.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we are all busy with our own life. Once we are born, we go for like 12, 16 years of
Yeah,
education. We have a job, wedding, and debt, debt and all these things, and we take our lives so seriously. And you are
yeah.
known for slaughtering these people and making fun of people who take life so seriously. What do you have to say to
Absolutely.
all these people who take life way too seriously?
Okay, so I was reading this book on karma. It doesn't matter if we believe it or not. I'm just going through it quickly. It basically says one thing, that the moment you take life seriously, you gain karma. Okay, why is that? Because you are identifying with things. You're saying this is also me, and that is also me, and that house is also me, but it's not. Okay, I mean, forget the whether you believe in karma or not, or even science or not. I mean, just look and you'll see that it's not. Similarly, everything in your life, all your ideas, all your relationships, everything that you do, it's just not you. It is just a drama. And every religion says, your Hinduism says it, your Buddhism says it very, very like strongly. Okay, Islam says it. It's one of the first verses of Islam saying that this life is a play. So everyone is trying to. It starts with mysticism and then ends in politics. Because people finally just get too greedy to live the world. So the truth is that everyone is saying that this is all pointless nonsense. Why are you taking it so seriously? Enjoy it. So that's all I want to tell them, that just stop taking yourself so seriously, because if my words can piss you off, right, then you're a loser. I didn't hit you. If I hit you, that's a problem. But if I just say words and you're getting angry, then I own you. That
Exactly.
is the saddest state of being.
Mm. Yeah, so you said life is like a play. Do you think this entire universe is a video game and we're mere characters? Do you believe in the simulation theory?
It is very possible. I don't rule it out.
Mm.
So yeah, it's like it seems to be like that. Like the way things are coming and the way missions come up and the way wars come up, it's very similar to a video game. There's a little bit of peace and then suddenly there's something else. It's possible. It's remotely possible.
Now, every single person I meet in drinking conversations or, in any kind of conversation, they usually have this argument where they try to push empathy, where they tell, like, if you don't agree with me, you're not empathetic enough. You need to be more empathetic. Would you encourage people to be more empathetic or apathetic?
Oh my God. Okay, so firstly, not agreeing with them is not being empathetic. That is a ridiculous argument. Uh, I can say I understand you, but I agree to disagree. Right. So that is in fact that is the epitome of empathy. Whereas they not understanding you is not, they are not being empathetic. In fact. So I'm sorry. What was the question?
No, the question is,
What is the question?
the question was, would you encourage people to be more empathetic or would you encourage them to be more apathetic?
I neither. Look at life how it is. How it's just like someone has a point of view. That's fine. If they don't, that's also fine. Someone's just living life. That is great. And if someone is trying to mess with you, that's the only thing you should have this about, because you care about your life or you care about your family. But otherwise, if you are either empathetic or apathetic, you're not going to be looking at life as it is. You're going to be looking at your version of life. You're going to discriminate between things and not look at the beauty and the grandioseness of life, basically.
Sometimes empathetic people can be too empathetic. Like their good things can actually do a lot of bad indirectly. And you've given a few examples of that also. Like you try to help someone, and they don't even need your help. Or if you give money to some beggar, for example, you don't know what they're doing with it. Like if a woman is holding a child, and if they say like, give me some money, my child hasn't eaten in days. One can either give them the money, or they can also think like, why did you have the child?
Absolutely.
But
if
sorry, but if I make that statement, I will be perceived as an asshole.
no, you'll be perceived as an asshole because not enough people make that statement. When enough people start making that statement, this is going to be the norm. At some point, the idea of the French Revolution was ridiculous, or the idea of the British leaving India was ridiculous. But when everyone said it, it is going to become a part of this. Right now, if we ridicule empathy, if we think of empathy as an ego trip, okay, I feel guilty, therefore I give the money. Okay, I feel bad, therefore, but why are you feeling bad? Did you get into that debt? Or is it just because society has told you that you're supposed to feel bad because he's poor? How is that my problem if he's poor? And something worse than the thought that you said is that I'll be like, okay, if the child starves and dies, I'll save him from a lifetime of suffering. Then people will be like, "Tu to Hitler hai, bhai." But that's okay. That's the price I'm willing to pay.
Yeah, the reason why they don't want the child to die is because they see death as the worst possible thing to happen to life. Do you think death needs a rebranding?
Oh, big time. I had put up a status also saying death needs a PR redo. So it desperately, because death is actually it's the most compassionate thing ever. And I don't understand why people don't see it as this. It's a result of a capitalistic society, because we need people. So we are like, don't let people die, don't let people die. But you're letting them suffer. How does that make any sense? Just let the person go. So society is trying to make you more identified with life, whereas mysticism isn't. So these two things are opposite. And if you just observe life, you just be like, there is nothing to be attached to, and you'll see life as it is. Like I said, that death is actually just freedom. There's no pain,
Yeah, and right now a lot of people are dying because we are in the middle of a pandemic. Compared to other, not in India really, because in India people are
Right.
dying anyhow. Like
All the
even
time.
if there's no COVID, people are dying. Like when people in New York Times or these the Guardian or any Western news media talks about Indian deaths and
Correct.
Indian chaos, I almost feel
Hmm.
like saying this has always been the case.
Right. So true.
And
So, go
what
on.
are your thoughts on this?
On the Indian chaos,
Yes.
okay. I think it's just Indians being Indians. We just don't change. Like, I genuinely had hope with Modi and all, and I really thought, that this guy has come here to make a change. And I was just like, what is he doing? Like, see, I know it's a bit this, but I kind of agree with what he's doing, and it's a very smart move. Because we are just too many people, and we cannot handle this level of population. uh and even if he was perfectly efficient and all, these many people would have eventually died because of, by the time the vaccine reached the population and all that. So what is happening is that, now at least somewhat people are thinking, should I have a child? There are these Indian pages with 4-5 million followers who are just putting up antinatalist posts without knowing it. Like, it's a common meme on the internet. And Indians are like, Arey, I can't afford anything in this pandemic. I can't do anything in this pandemic. How am I going to have a child? At least that realization is coming, and that is worth everything, like everything that is happening right now.
Conspiracy theorists are using this vaccine thing and Bill Gates thing to say that they're trying to depopulate the planet. Would you support a depopulation rule by the government?
Oh yes, absolutely. Like, if there is this theory with the FLS that if there is a red button to press which eliminates everything, basically obliviates everything painlessly, they would press it, and I would press it. But actually, conspiracy theorists are wrong. It could be the opposite. The virus is the depopulation strategy, because it's killing, a weaker section of the population, and it makes sense to everyone. Like, these people would not have survived in nature. Why should they survive now?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't mean to be insensitive, but most people who are dying from COVID are diabetic and obese. And these guys
Yeah,
wouldn't live, even without COVID, they wouldn't live a long life.
exactly. I mean, most of them have lived their lives. Okay, they have lived long enough. And they have partied hard. They have been abusive to their body. Okay, most of them. I'm sure some of them have no choice, and some are born with diabetes or whatever. But most of them have been abusive to their bodies, and they are all immunocompromised people. So just let it be, now. Let them go. Like, it is so, you're saving so much suffering instead of continuing that nonsense.
Yes, and a lot of foreigners, again, going back to that foreign media thing, a lot of foreigners are feeling sorry for us. But what they don't realize is that we are actually lacking protein, we're lacking vitamins. We are a country that's obsessed with carbohydrates and sugar. We don't eat meat,
Yeah,
a lot of us. And we
absolutely.
expect to live long.
It's not even about meat, it's about, we have so many grains within our food structure. We don't even need to have meat or milk. Like, if assume you're vegan, and I don't agree with veganism, but assume you're vegan, you have so many things to eat, but we just don't eat them. We don't have fruits. We don't have they're just grains. So you are obviously, you're so weak. Okay, even if you're rich, these are rich people I'm talking about, who don't have enough protein, they don't have enough vitamins. So obviously you're going to, there's no consciousness to your food, and all we do is gravies. Thankfully, the South has a little healthy food. Otherwise, the North is a mess. So, and also we are ungrateful. If Modi had got the vaccines on the right time and done everything efficiently, we would have found some other problem. We would always have found some other issue. Char log mar gaye. That's why this guy is an asshole. Arey, but he saved 5 million people. Can't you see that? I'd given in my podcast, I'd given the example of Irom Sharmila. You know who that is?
Yes.
Yeah, the lady who's for 16 years she was on fast for her state, and they gave her 90 votes when she stood for election. That is how grateful we
Are you a Modi supporter?
are. Yeah, yeah, I can say that because I like the way he's doing things, and he's just like, get out, leave. I don't care about your poverty. I don't care about your bullshit. You had 5 kids. I think basically that's what he's saying, because if you observe his speeches and all, they are very anti-natalist. They are like, what the hell are you all doing? Like, what is this nonsense? You all want the Ram Mandir? Take the Ram Mandir. That kind of thing. Like, lay and just just don't bother me. Just give me votes. That kind of thing.
But don't you
So,
think his antinatalism is more directed towards people of a particular religion?
mm, I don't think so actually, because that religion thing, right, for him is it's just for the popularity. But he knows at some level, I feel he's a very smart guy who understands the mess we are in, and that we will never be able to come out of it. Because in 15 to 20 years, we are going to hit a population this, like, where we don't have enough people to work. And if we are poor by then, right, then what do you like? There is no other option but to we'll continue being a poor country basically forever. So there's no way to get out of that trap. The only two ways is either reduce the population through drastic measures, which he's just doing by putting his hands up, or get in massive investment, which the people won't allow. The people will never allow massive investment.
Okay. Growing up, did you have any icons or idols who shaped you to be the person that you are today?
No one famous ever, but always people around me. Like, I always observed people, and more people taught me what not to do than what to do. Because I was just observing the way they live life, and I'm like, this guy's unhappy, no. This guy's unhappy, no. Okay, and I would never do anything that I'm unhappy with. So I just like observe the nuances of that, and most people don't have nuances. They live life in very gross block ways. That's not how life works. Life has a lot of nuance. Within you, there are millions of cells working up nuances basically to keep you alive. So similarly, the entire universe works that way. And I would look at these people. So if at all, I'd say my mother. Like, I've seen the way she behaves with life and the way she handles it. And the women in my family are very like, we don't have a concept of sexism here. If I say something rude to them, they say something rude back. That's it. There's no calling out sexism and all that nonsense. It's like, yeah, to be wo hai. That's it. So basically, yeah, the women in my life, like a lot of, they've really taught me a lot of things, and I find them to be much, much more sensible than the men. Much, much more nuanced, much, much more able to be educated.
Also, you said that sexism is natural and there is nothing that can be done about it. I think I'm paraphrasing you, but that's something that you said in the past. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Okay, so sexism, yeah. So sexism, what happens is, right, it's a part of our everyday life, right? Sometimes a woman will call me sexist, say sexist things to me, like as a man, right? I'll be like, "Ye kya, what the hell is this? Like, go pick up that bucket because you're stronger, you're a man," right? That is also sexist. I'll say sexist things to a woman. But calling out sexism is ridiculous. What you must do is you must fight back, or you must be sassy about it. Like, be sarcastic. Why can't you pick it up? You're also like women first or whatever. Something like that. Like, when two people are fighting it out, it is a fair match. And I'm not even talking physically here. Yes, men are physically stronger than women, but unfortunately. But when we are talking about in social situations, in verbal situations, women can easily rule the roost. Why should they call out sexism? And it's like saying, we are in a fight and you picked up a knife. So I called out, oh, you have a knife. That is ridiculous. If he's picked up a knife, you pick up a knife. That's it.
But if the woman picks up a knife, she'll get stabbed because men are the stronger, biologically speaking, men are the stronger gender, right?
Yes, of course. I'm not talking about a fight. I just gave you a very gross example. But of course, I think even when it comes to physical things, women should learn to fight, because there is going to be a day, there is going to be a place where some idiot, even if you improve all of society, some idiot sitting in the corner, not raised by his mother, okay, on drugs, is going to come. one day, just it's going to be 1 second in your life. Train for it. Aapka, what are you losing by training? Just train for it. You'll be so confident. See, there are so many advantages to training for it. You'll be more confident. You'll be able to handle people better. You'll have more sass, even conversationally. There's a lot of advantages. So even physically, even verbally, there should be no discrimination. There should be like, if you give one, I'll give one. Finish.
But do you think sexism can be totally removed from our society, or do you think feminists should just give up?
Sexism cannot be removed, and it should not be removed in the sense of, if it's artificially removed, you're creating a safe space for a woman. And when she goes out, right, then there is going to be sexism. So it can never be removed from society. Maybe it can be removed from your house. Maybe it can be removed from your immediate society. But when she goes into larger society, there is going to be sexism. How will she handle that if you're creating a safe space for her here? That doesn't make sense.
Okay, another unrelated question. It's actually two questions. Okay, firstly, what's with the fake beard? Secondly, does the carpet match the drapes?
Yeah. No, we don't have a carpet here. It's Goa, so it's super hot. And the fake beard was just an idea, like, because in college I used to like give these lectures. Like I used to talk to. We had this festival, right? And when we had free time, like with my gang, there were like 40-50 people used to sit and listen to me, like, and I would just talk to them about life and women and men and stuff like that. And they said, why don't you just start talking on the internet? So I said, okay. And many years, like I think 3-4 years later, I sort of got into this. I'm going to start talking. So they said, why don't you keep a Baba type of thing? And then it just became a symbol. Like now it's a symbol that he's got the beard, and like we don't know his face. Let's go on his Facebook and check it out. It's that kind of a thrill. So it's fun. I really enjoy keeping it. It's also another thing. It's to get people's attention. They're like, who's this idiot? If I just shown my face, it would just be another guy talking nonsense. It was like, who's this fool? And then you hear what he's saying, and then you realize, okay, maybe there is some sense. It's that contradiction which hits your brain.
An individual's opinions are usually shaped by his experience. Was there any experience in your childhood or in your early life that shaped you as the person that you are today?
In my own life, personally speaking, I have not gone through it, because I've lived a very charmed life there. I mean, there's been enough money, food, everything is there. Not too much, but enough. It was a good amount, enough to not spoil me or destroy my brain cells. And but when I saw, because of this life, right, because of this good life, I was kind of in a watchtower where I could see everything else. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, what is this other life? One example is the women in my house. Okay, we didn't have this concept of sexism. So if I said something, they'd say something back, or we had this concept. But when I went out, I realized that women don't fight back. I'm like, what the hell is this? So it got me, thinking like, wow, women are actually going through this, but why are they going through? Then it went into the life thing. We're like, why are people suffering? Why are people born on the road? Is it karma? Is it afterlife? Is it, past, whatever? And through a lot of discovery. So just observing from my watchtower helped me realize, and I could see the richer people, because I have a lot of way richer friends than me. Okay. And they were also not happy. So I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like, why? How can money not solve your problem? And then it gave me this overall view, So it's been like 10 years of continuous experience trying to understand what the hell is going on.
So what do you think an individual should do to be happy and peaceful?
The first thing, the most important thing is leave attachments, because the moment you're attached to something, right, it's like my hand is attached to the wall over there, right? Suppose now I get attached to something else, the other wall over there. Now I am not 12 feet long, right? So my body will break, right? If I'm trying to get attached to something else, my body will break. Then I put my leg to the ceiling, my body will break even more, right? And I'm going to have fractured legs, limbs, whatever, and I'm not going to be happy. The moment you detach, right, and you use all the walls to your advantage, and the ceiling and the floor to your advantage, and use them in the place that they are, you will be happy, because there is no question of adding to your burden. The moment you add to your burden, that's why I say rich people are not happy, because they have all that money to think about. And for them, poverty is not the fear. It's the lack of that Mercedes or the lack of that house. What if I go into a smaller house? And that is a terrible state to be in, because they're so attached to everything and there's nothing else defining them. Everyone is sucking up to them because they are rich, especially if they are born in money. So their entire status, their entire identity is on this money. And identity itself should not exist, because there is no identity. You're nothing. You're going to die in this. Gone.
Yeah, you're basically a nihilist, right? I mean, if I'm not.
Well, yeah, it's slightly more complicated than that. But yeah, basically a nihilist, in the sense of someone who doesn't believe in any kind of morality or any kind of thought processes that form society, basically.
Do you meditate, or do you ever think that, we are overthinking too much and I need to silence my own thoughts? Because the main thing that you have, the main thing, that issue that you have with society is that it thinks too much. Individuals want too much. They're too attached. How do we stop ourselves from thinking so much?
That is the same thing. It's all about attachment here. Okay, now you're attached to things. I get it. Okay, things are real, but thoughts are not. Thoughts are just a bunch of memories. And what happens is our thoughts are so beautiful. Okay, at times, or even if they are horrible, we get addicted to them. We like the idea because we can create and recreate them. And then we get into a loop. So if I had a bad thought and I felt good about it, because there is something good about feeling depressed. Okay, it's very addictive. So you had the bad thought, then you have one more bad thought, and then your brain just goes into that loop. You create neural loops. Like, this is proper science. You create neuronal loops which sort of just keep repeating and repeating and repeating. And then you get into that thing. So you get obsessed with ideas. The best thing, even with thoughts, is to just observe them as they go and just look at them, because thoughts are really not real. Your Mercedes is slightly more real than your thoughts, but your thoughts are just nothing. So first thing is to get over the thoughts, look at them, observe, like, what is this nonsense? Analyze things to death and they will disappear.
Interesting, man. But I think it will take a lot of years to get into that zone, right? Or you think there's a quick way to get into that truly meditative zone?
It depends. The way our society is formed, yes, it will take time. It will definitely take time. But if society turns meditative, right, then it will come to us naturally, because I feel that is our nature. Like, we are just born to live, chill, enjoy life. We don't have to get up and do random stuff. But it took me 5 years, 7 years to understand that chilling is fine. You're going to just die. But if society had told me that when I was 2, then I would have been in a different state today. Everyone would have.
There's one more word that actually needs rebranding. A while back, we were talking about how death needs rebranding. Death is seen as a bad thing, but it should be seen as an okay thing. There's a word that is seen very positively. I think it has to be rebranded and turned into something ugly. Okay, and that word is career. A lot of our problems here in India is because of that word career. How would you try to rebrand this word career?
Career is such a lie. It is the lie of all lies. It is literally, I can tell you, the word career is a culmination of all lies. Okay, like, your reputation is included in career. Your job, your growth prospects, your entire life is your career. I mean, people are getting wives because of their careers. And what is your career? Like, tomorrow, if I bribe your boss and ensure that you don't come, some corrupt idiot is sitting on the top, and ensure that you don't come up in your career, what is your career? Nothing. Okay, tomorrow if some big politician wants to destroy you, he'll destroy you in 5 minutes. He'll put child porn on your phone and get you arrested. Who are you? And these guys are like, basically it's kind of a mental masturbation. And it's designed to control you. It's genius. It's a beautiful way of doing it. Like, and it's a very 20th century thing. There was always an idea of career and do something, but the way it has become, the form that it has taken in the 20th century, is like this monster, and this entire bunch of lies just creates your life, and it gives you your identity. So anything they take away from it, even the smallest strand, like, tomorrow you're this big guy CEO and you cannot enter a certain club who will be devastated. So they own you. That career is a beautiful thing to just own people.
Yes, and children are a byproduct of this career again. They get a nice job, a nice car, and then they get kids. They put their kids in the best school. In one of your videos, you said everyone is defrauding you, including yourself. What do you mean by that?
Okay. So what happens is that we are constantly telling ourselves something. This career is an example of that. Everyone is telling you some lie. For example, if there's a baby, right, and just let the baby be. Why do you have to go? Like, what's the logic? You are trying to tell it that this is a good thing and this is a bad thing. Why are you telling? Okay? Teach it survival. Of course, it must learn survival. It must learn to eat food, and let it observe life. Let him observe what you're doing. Why do you have to teach it? Everyone is trying to teach a child something, and then the child teaches itself. Okay, and then the child is like, oh, this is right, this is right. Neural loops. Okay, and so everyone is first defrauding you, and then you develop your own thing, defrauding yourself, and then you don't realize who you are. So that's this loop that is going on in society. This lies.
One thing that I don't understand is more than a middle class person, a poor person has a lot of kids. In a middle class person, even if he has a lot of savings in his bank, he will tell himself, why should I have a kid right now? I want to grow up in my career. I want to travel. Whereas a poor person, maybe they're not conscious enough. They haven't realized it yet. They go on pumping out a unit one after another every year. And that's why we have a mass population that cannot be fed and clothed in India. That's
absolutely. And because for them, like you said, units, they're literally units. For the poor, the more hands you have, the more food you'll get. For them, it's like a factory. They're running a factory at the center of which they are, and their poverty is like this oil that runs the factory. And they'll constantly, send one into the farm, send one into the market, send one to do this, get chores done basically. And that's it. But for the middle class, he has to pay for school, because otherwise people will laugh at him. He has to pay for tuition classes, otherwise people will laugh at him. So it's always about, for the middle class, it is always about pleasing Pratibha auntie, some random auntie, okay? And it is, for the lower class, it is also about pleasing the others, but they have a different level of pleasing.
I think a lot of middle class men and women in their late 20s and in their early 30s, now they have realized that I don't want to have a child, or I want to postpone having a child, is because of because middle class people have more free time than poor people. And in that free time, they tend to think. And because they have started thinking, they have realized, oh, wait a minute, why am I doing this step by step by step? Why can't I do things differently?
Yeah, absolutely. And that thought rises with partially with education. Also when you have a full stomach, I feel that like when poor people, why they have I always wondered, why do they have so much sex? Where do they get the energy? Like, if I'm hungry, I think of Swiggy, not Durex. Okay, so it's like so I'm just like, yaar, khana, how I cannot even think when I am hungry, and these people are busy doing it. So I realized that it's about a secretion of hormones. Like when you're hungry, what else do you do? So when you have sex, it sort of, and you're used to hunger. They're more than anything, they're used to hunger. So they do have sex so that it feels good. At least something feels good in their drab lives. So for them, it's an escape. For these people, it's pleasure. It's a different point of view.
Yeah, they, like you said, they're used to hunger, but middle class people, they click a photo of giving bags of rice to poor people, and they put it on Instagram and say, hey, look, I'm doing such good things. And you see the poor person, it's almost like, I don't give a fuck.
Now the poor, especially in India, we have honed poverty to the best, like the purest level. Like everyone knows what to say, how to cry in front of the camera. Oh, main gareeb hu, dihadi mazdoor hai sahab. That kind of, that they know exactly the tone of getting someone to feel sad. So it is all a business, and they are all defrauding each other. The poor are defrauding the rich are defrauding the poor. Everyone is just, it's a continuous circle, especially in India.
That's why
I believe the poor are very conscious.
That's why I
Go
like disruptive capitalism as opposed to the socialist, policies that we had previously in India.
on.
Because in
Hmm.
in the modern disruptive politics, even a poor person can become rich. Okay, earlier that was not the case, and a poor person can be a threat to a rich person. Now,
True.
this whole empathy thing that the rich people have, oh, I have to look empathetic towards in front of society, that goes away because now the poor has the opportunity to become rich.
Right. But
Yeah.
but that will never work. Unfortunately, that disruptive idea will never work because they even through this helping the poor and all, you're actually debilitating them. If all the rich people and the middle class people stop donating, trust me, the poor will start making their own money. Okay, they'll start they'll start self-helping. They'll start self-help, and they will make it, because if they really want to make it, they will make it. But if you're getting food every day from some fool, okay, then you think you deserve it. And I have seen this with Indian poor. They think you have it now, give it to me, like I deserve it, you know. So it's like a crutch. The day they stop, and the rich people know this, the day they stop, the poor will make it, and that will be real disruptive capital.
So did we miss anything? Do you want to talk about something?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything now.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do now after this podcast?
Nothing, man. Chill, man. I mean, I basically chill all day, and I sometimes take like an online class and shit. And I'm searching for clients here because all this lockdown nonsense. So, like, if I get clients, I get clients. Otherwise, I'm chill because I made some money and all. I'm just sitting, reading books.
What kind of martial arts do you teach?
It's called Krav Maga.
Krav Maga.
So it's like it's an Israeli martial art. You must have heard of it. I don't know. And I had gone to the Israeli army at one point, trained over there and stuff. And then when I came back also, I trained 1 or 2 years. And then I just started teaching. Like, someone came up to me and said, will you teach? So I said, okay, I'll teach. And then it just became like something I really enjoyed doing more than anything else.
Okay. And lastly, let's say a guy, he decides to commit suicide. Okay, would you encourage him to go on with it, or would you tell him, you know what, don't do it, man, just stay alive for a while?
First, I'd encourage him to realize what his life is. My question is, why are you killing yourself? Why are you thinking of ending it? Is it because of a bad marriage? Is it because of money? Or is it because you just find life pointless? Okay, my question is, you're alive. Okay, is there serious pain in your life? If there is serious pain, then yes, go ahead. If there is no serious pain, sit and explore yourself. Okay, why not? Because you're already here. Like this famous thing in Munna Bhai, he says, local train to aati jati rehti hai. There's a girl about to commit suicide, and he's like, the trains keep coming. Just let me talk to you. No, give me 5 minutes. I'll talk to you. So in the same way, there are a million ways to end it, but there is only one way to look at life, or actually a lot of ways to look at life. But the conclusion, your conclusion could be very different if you look inside more than out. Most people who are committing suicide are looking outside and saying this is nonsense. They have not explored enough within. And if they have, then I'll be like, okay, fair enough. If you really think you have, because I cannot judge how much is right for you. If you think you have, then okay, that's your choice.
Okay, man. I think that concludes the most controversial episode of this podcast yet. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Nihil Anand.
Thank you, boss. Thank you. All right.